This edition of Mac Voices is brought to you by Harry's, the shaving gear you will respect, not throw away. To get $5 off your first order, go to harrys.com and use the offer code MacVoices. Welcome to Mac Notables on Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, after a long absence, just because it was my absence more than his, Mr. Ted Landau. Ted, it's great to see you. It seems like, well, I haven't seen you since Macworld, obviously.
Yes, and I just want to point out to our viewers that we are coming live from Macworld in 2013 through a time warp that Chuck has set up, and we'll be having many videos posted online from the Mac very soon when he gets through with the backlog that he's working with now.
Are you trying to tell them something, Ted?
Chuck does not live in the present, apparently. He just posts from some past point about things that he's still doing. One day you will catch up with the present, I'm sure, but we're waiting to see that happen.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, it takes time to process stuff and, render it and upload it. And then there's this little matter of sleep and a day job that get in the way, too. So
sleep is important. I keep reading things about how, I don't like sleep, especially as you get to be my age. You sort of resent sleep because you could be doing something else in the limited time you have left. So, but I keep reading things about how not enough sleep is one of the worst things that you can do to your health.
Yeah. The limited time you have left, Ted. I mean, that makes it sound for at least one of us a little questionable. Is something we don't know?
No, I don't mean limited like in the next few months, but you're approaching an age where you start facing your mortality, and you realize that the end is going to come. You've spent more years on Earth than you likely have in front of you. So
that's deep, Ted.
Whatever.
Yeah. And it seems inappropriate, but I'm going to do it anyway. That at this Macworld, as we talked about earlier, that you've decided to retire from Macworld speaking. You gave your last session.
Yes, I did. It went well. I expected it to be a small session, and it was. I think there must have been about maybe 40 people there or something like that. And the talk went. My wife Naomi showed up, which she normally doesn't do, and that was kind of nice. And she really liked the talk, so that was. I'm glad to hear that, and it went well. It was a talk I gave. I thought it was a well done talk, actually. Saying so myself, I managed to do slides with no text on them, just about, which I usually don't do. And I think I would do more and more if I kept giving talks now. Over the years, I've come to appreciate the complaint from people that say, you don't want to talk in which what you're saying appears on the screen behind you. And I have taken that to heart. And this was probably the most thorough talk I ever gave in that direction. So that was kind of nice. Yeah. I did forget to say one thing I was going to say, but it wasn't any big deal.
First, to talk about the presentation style, though, Ted, there are books written about that, and I don't understand why you still have presentations where they just feel like they have to put all this verbiage up. It's be a little more creative, or pick 2 or 3 words and punch people in the face with them, but don't make them read Mark Twain, for crying out loud. It's just crazy.
Yeah, we get spoiled, I think, because the presentations at Macworld are pretty good overall. But I live near UC Berkeley, and my wife and I go to some talks on campus from time to time that are open to the public, and there are a lot of them. It's one of the cool things about living near Berkeley. And we went to one that the talk itself wasn't that bad, but the slide presentation was horrendous. And having just left Macworld, I was maybe more sensitive to it. I mean, the slides. There was no consistency to the slides. It looked like he had cobbled together slides from 5 different presentations. They had different backgrounds, different typefaces, different ways of presenting the data. And we went from one slide to the other. You never knew what was going to come next. And then the slides themselves were virtually all text or complicated graphs that you couldn't interpret without him guiding you through them. And then often on the text, the important information was it was almost like the text would be some excerpt page from a journal article, and the key thing he wanted to say would be one sentence, which he would then have to point to or something like that. And you're looking at all this text that has nothing to do with whatever it is he's going to say anyways. It's bad enough that the text is on the screen if it was relevant, but it wasn't even relevant half the time. And I'm shaking my head and going to Naomi, oh my God, this guy would get thrown out of Macworld if he tried to give a talk like this.
Yeah, it still amazes me that people don't learn. My favorite one still, and I talked to Les Posen about this before Macworld because he did a session on Keynote there. My favorite one is when the speaker will turn around, look up at his own slide, and say, "You probably can't read that, but," and it's like, wow, just how stupid. How many more ways do you want to just say I'm stupid? I just don't get it.
Yeah.
So. You've retired now from Macworld. I'm glad to hear the session went well. Unfortunately, I was tied up doing an interview with Jeff Barrow from Drobo on the show floor, so I didn't get to go. But any regrets, Ted, that you've made this decision?
No, absolutely not. I'm very happy with it. I mean, well, okay. Sometimes, like I was just saying, this was probably, in some sense, the most polished talk I ever gave. Maybe that's not true, but in the sense that I'm talking about. And so once you reach that point, I start thinking, well, no, now that I've got the hang of this, maybe I could. It took me this long to finally figure out how to give a good presentation. Maybe now I should get on a roll. So yeah, sometimes I'll give a thought in that direction. But basically, I'm very happy with the decision. And it was actually going to be part of a larger retirement. I thought I was going to be giving up writing for Macworld around this time, the magazine, not the expo, or at the same time. But Macworld, I think, as we talked about before, has been very kind in just saying, you don't have to stick to any schedule. Just write when you feel like it, and we'll likely publish it. So it's hard to retire from doing that because sometime I'm going to feel like writing something. So I'll still be writing for Macworld on an intermittent basis, but not on the regular schedule that I've been doing. So it's a general pullback.
Okay, I'll take pullback. I was not happy about retirement. Pullback, I understand. And we still have another year to talk you out of the retirement thing.
I'm not going to be talking to Macworld.
Not going to do that. Okay. Ted, how about the show? Now we have a little perspective, and as much as you were joking, we have about a 2.5 week perspective, I guess. What were your impressions of it this year?
Well, really not much different than the previous year, which I think is a good thing. I don't mean that as critical. I think the show has achieved a leveling off. When Apple pulled out and all the change occurred, and it shifted ultimately from Macworld to Macworld / iWorld, there was the decline in the booths on the exhibit floor, and all that occurred. There was obviously all this talk about, is this the end of Macworld? Is there any reason to go to Macworld? And all these Voice of Doom articles. And I actually wrote articles at the time arguing that wasn't the case. I was pretty pro Macworld even back then. And I'm happy to see that in some sense those of us who support Macworld are vindicated, because it's emerged as a very different show. It is true, I think. Maybe the most negative thing you can say is that if you're going to Macworld expecting what Macworld was like 10 years ago, or even maybe 5 years ago, then you're going to be disappointed, because it isn't like that anymore. But except for maybe the sessions, I think that the talks are fairly much the same, but in terms of quality, which was good. But if you go to Macworld expecting what Macworld now is, then I think you'll have a great time. It's a much more consumer focused. Initially, it was more industry focused, sort of like CES, where the public isn't even invited to CES, but the public could come to Macworld, but that wasn't the focus. Now it's clearly a consumer-oriented show. It's clearly embraced iOS, even in the name, iWorld, and it's fun. You have the sessions there, and you have a lot more consumer-focused stuff, the rapid fire and the scavenger hunt, and the floor remains interesting. That's the other thing. I think actually the most positive thing I can probably say is I think this was probably the best year to roam the floor since it became Macworld iWorld. On the one hand, there isn't a representative. There isn't a broad spectrum of booths there that represent everything you'd be interested in. It's likely that if you went there hoping to see some specific booth, you might not find it. But if you go there with saying, well, here's an opportunity to explore whatever, however it was decided who wants to come to Macworld Expo and who wound up on the floor, I'm going to just explore and see what it is. You find a lot of interesting things. What was amazing to me, actually, is I spent 3 days covering the floor trying to see almost every booth, if not every booth that I could. And still, when some of these best of show things came out, there were a couple of things that I had missed. And either I had just saw it didn't seem very interesting, so I just skipped over it, or I outright didn't see it. So there was a lot to see there.
Ted, it makes me so happy that you had those same observations, because that's the way I felt. I ran into a number of people that, their comment was, well, it's not the way it used to be. And no, but nothing is. The world isn't. Mm-hmm. I tried to talk to as many as I possibly could, but I'm like you. I didn't get to everybody. Now I'm reading wrap-ups and things and thinking, darn, I saw that booth and I just didn't get back to it. Or somebody wasn't there to interview when I stopped by and I never made it back. Mm-hmm. But 3 days, it wasn't enough. And I know there are going to be those who say, well, this show floor was smaller. Yeah, but if you didn't take the time, frankly, the booth staff didn't have time to reach out and grab you and pull you in. They were too busy talking to people already there. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think, a big difference.
Yeah, and as always, a lot of the booths I talked to that were selling stuff were excited about how well stuff was going. I wanted to buy something, actually, I think from, I forget the company now, but it makes iPhone case accessories and stuff like that. And they had something I was interested in buying, but they said they sold out of it yesterday. So.
Yeah, I talked to several people that were buying, and they were having the same experience. They were either out, they'd had to send for more product, mm-hmm. or they couldn't keep up. And so I'm with you. I think it was very much a success. I think it's a different show. Mm-hmm. But I feel kind of bad for the people that are still saying, well, I'm not sure if it's worth going. Because if you don't go, you're not going to get the press coverage. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get the visibility among the attendees, but I feel like more and more there's a virtual side to the show because so many people are there. I mean, I was doing video. I know a lot of people were doing video and audio. There were plenty of trade publications there. If you're not there, you can't be interviewed. Mm-hmm. Just as simple.
Yeah, I think it's time to just stop. Of course, I'm guilty of it, having brought it up myself in answer to your question. But I think it's time to stop talking about how different it is from the past. And it reminds me. I was trying to think of a metaphor. When I was a little kid, back during the Civil War, they had these huge. I grew up in New York City, and they had these huge movie theaters that they used for these. Back then, when a big movie like Ben-Hur or something, what would be considered a blockbuster movie these days, when a big movie like that opened, typically it opened in one theater in New York City, and that was it. It was like for the whole New York City area. Going to see it was like going to see a Broadway show. It was only one place you could see it, at least for a few weeks in its initial run. And you would go, and it'd be the sumptuous theater that would look like something out of Hollywood in the 1930s or something like that. And these long films would have intermissions, again, just like a Broadway show, where all of a sudden, My Fair Lady was like that, I remember too. And there would be these souvenir books that you could buy. Again, it mimicked a lot of the live Broadway show stuff, and was all very elegant, and people got dressed up and stuff like that. Now, if you want to see the latest Spider-Man that's going to open up in a week or so, you go to a multiplex that has 15 theaters, and maybe because of when you pick to go, you're going to see it in a theater that can seat 100 people, and you're lucky if the other people in the audience are fully clothed. So it's a totally different. But you don't hear people going. Of course, a lot of the people in the audience would have no idea that everything was like that before, but you don't hear people going, oh, it's not like it used to be. Yeah, it isn't like it used to be, but nobody cares anymore that it isn't like it used to be. It's moved on, it's something else, and maybe it's better, maybe it's worse, but it's successful, and that's the way things are now. And that's what I'd like to see be the situation for Macworld. It's something else, and let's just move on.
Yeah. What, Spider-Man and the audience is not fully clothed, Ed? Is this a California thing?
I don't mean just what I mean is the idea that you get dressed up to go to the movies.
Oh, okay.
That's totally gone. Nobody does that anymore. Whatever.
Yeah, nobody gets dressed up to do anything anymore. I mean, it's, except for the business people, the ties in the evening, jackets are a real stretch.
And far from me to complain about that, by the way, because the last time I went somewhere where I was wearing something other than jeans was in 1993, I think, or something like that. So I'm very much the casual dresser, but still, I'm just trying to make a point.
Yeah, no. I think it's a real good one, and we can both go back and forth about why some of the observations aren't valid. The one thing that I really do think that people need to realize when they go to any of these shows is that you do have to work just this much. You have to walk by the booth and maybe stop and let them give you the 30-second elevator pitch. And if you find it completely boring, then move on. But that was something I had that experience repeatedly where. And it's something I think that I'd like to have vendors improve a little bit. The signage didn't always tell me what the product was. Mm-hmm. And I've been using the example, our new product is screwdriver. Okay, well, what is that? Is that home repair, or is that security, or what is that?
Mm-hmm.
Give me a little bit more of a hook to bring me in.
Mm-hmm.
But once you stop and talk to some of these people, there's some amazingly cool things there, and a lot of them that had never been to Macworld before, which is another thing I think is really interesting.
Yeah. I bought several iOS apps as a result of seeing them on the show floor that I would not have had otherwise. And one other thing I'll mention in terms of Macworld, that the talks, obviously a little prejudiced as someone who's given talks, but the talks are one of the best things about Macworld Expo. There are a lot of great talks that are given there, and in the past, being able to afford going to see all the talks required that you buy a ticket that was much more expensive than it is now. I think you have almost an all access, if not all access, pass, so to speak, to the talks. I think it was like $195. I might be mistaken, but that's the number that sticks out in my head for right now. It was at least double that, if not triple that, back in the day. So people who want to see the talks have a better opportunity to do that than they ever have before.
And judging by a lot of the talks that I stuck my head in on, there were a lot of them that were standing room only. Depending on what time of day, and obviously what the competing sessions were, but sure. there were a lot that were just stacked full, and people seem to not be upset by that. They seem to just say, I really want to be here for this, whatever it is, whoever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, good show. I've already put it on my calendar for next year and can't wait.
Yeah. Well, I'll be there even if I'm not talking.
Good. Glad to hear it. Mm. So one of your recent articles, and I'm not sure if you said that it's coming out or it has come out already as we record this, but the decline of the digital video recorder, or DVR. This seems to be an especially interesting topic, timely topic, as we see so much distribution going online. We see new channels being added to Apple TV. We see the Aereo trial in the Supreme Court right now. What is your thinking on the DVR? Is it going away, and if it is, why?
Well, I think it is going away. I don't like many of these articles that I write about things that may be going away. I don't mean they're going away next week, but within the next few years, I think you're going to see a significant shift. I talked about in the article, and it was what was published already. I posted it yesterday on my Slanted Viewpoint blog, and I start with a little bit of history, so to speak, in which I talk about how the VCR was a dramatic improvement at the time, and for the first time it allowed you to time shift, to record something and view it later rather than be tied to when it was being broadcast. And then I went on to point out that soon was replaced by the DVD player. There were very few DVD recorders that were sold in comparison, and that meant pretty much an end to time shifting if you were dependent on a DVD player. And in fact, I said, really, though the VCR held the promise of time shifting, it wasn't a very well realized promise, because a lot of people still would be stuck at trying to figure out how to get rid of the blinking 12 and never got to the point of actually programming the VCR to do something. So then I said, but that all changed with the DVR, the digital video recorder, because now for the first time you could record almost an unlimited number of shows, certainly a dozen or more over the course of a week, say, have them all record automatically without you having to even think about whether you inserted the DVD or the cassette properly and set it to the right station. It could even figure out when shows were going to be on that you wanted to watch that you didn't know were going to be on and record those. And you can play them back instantly without having to rewind a tape or insert a DVD or anything like that. And so it was really a tremendous advance. I mean, there was. I mean, I didn't like. It had a couple of drawbacks. One of them being that if your DVR broke and you needed to call Comcast, say, which is who has my DVR, and get it replaced with another one, you lost all your recorded content. Comcast offers no way to back up or otherwise make copies of your recordings. And there are a couple of other drawbacks which I go into in the article, but basically it was a great device. And so, but it too now seems to be on the decline, and which is what the point of the article was. And I think it's on the decline in a good way, because I think it's ultimately, if things work out, will be far better than the way things are now. And that is that we're moving toward more and more towards depending upon the cloud and streaming. My son, for instance, has both an Apple TV and a Roku, because he got the Roku as a gift after he'd already gotten the Apple TV. And he uses them now in lieu of a DVR. He doesn't have a DVR and doesn't care, because almost everything that he wants to watch that he would ordinarily record, he can watch either through the Apple TV or the Roku. And so I started trying to envision, what would be a sort of perfect melding of all these services: iTunes, Netflix, Apple TV, Roku, and the article goes on and describes what I think is something that might actually happen, where I could imagine a service where they have virtually everything that's ever been broadcast and put on a movie screen, with the exception of maybe the latest stuff, that's still in theaters and stuff like that, and you'll be able to call it up to stream it, like Netflix. Sort of like, imagine if Netflix had everything ever recorded instead of just the streaming stuff that they have available now. And that you could even, in a limited sense, and again, I go into the details in the article, in a limited sense, download some of these stuff for offline viewing if you wanted to watch something when you weren't going to be connected to the internet. You wouldn't need a DVR anymore, because whatever you wanted to watch was available to you. And then I got into briefly the Aereo stuff, which I mentioned that as an added bonus with something like Aereo, which doesn't pretend to offer that level of service. It's just limited to live broadcasts. But the Aereo offers the ability to actually pick something that you want to watch from live TV and record it to a DVR in the cloud, so to speak. So you have your own personal cloud-based DVR recorder. So if you were to combine something like Aereo with something like this mega Netflix service that I'm envisioning, then there would be absolutely zero need for a physical DVR, and they'd be disappearing. And I think that's the direction we're going. In the end of the article, I say, okay, but there are a couple of things to bear in mind. One is trying to imagine that level of video transfer over the current internet bandwidth it will bring it to a halt, I imagine, at this point. I mean, Netflix alone is causing problems. Imagine if Netflix had 10 times the traffic that it has now. It would be hard to deal with. But improvements in internet bandwidth are on the way. There are talks about speeds of the internet being multiples, exponentially larger than they are now in the not too distant future. So I think that's a technological problem that's on its way to being solved, and I'm not too concerned about that. The bigger issue, and which ultimately could kill it, is, do the people with the power to implement this want it? And the answer is probably no. The Hollywood studios, the Comcasts and internet service providers, the TV networks, the idea that there would be this one unified service or even multiple variations of it in competition, I don't think that's something that those parties are that interested in. In fact, I think my guess is that Apple has been pushing for something in this direction, probably not as extreme as I'm suggesting, but has been pushing for something in that direction for their rumored Apple television. And that's part of the reason why we haven't seen it yet, because it's been hard to get the content providers on board. And I'd like to think, my optimistic view of the world is that when something is desirable and technically possible, that we'll eventually see it. And I think that's largely true. I mean, we may not see it in quite the way we imagined, and certainly not for as cheaply as we might imagine, because the powers that be will figure out another way to charge us for that content, even though it looks like it wouldn't be that way now. But we'll see it eventually. And I think that's largely true, but at the same time, I worry a little bit that it isn't going to happen, that Comcast has killed enough things over the years. In fact, I was just reading an article today about how Comcast continues to try to get rid of the cable card that's necessary for TiVo devices to work. And who knows? I suppose it's possible that Comcast could kill TiVo. That's what the government regulatory agencies are there to prevent, and they don't seem to be doing a very good job of working to prevent that. So I worry a little, but at the same time, I remain optimistic, I guess, that we're going to move in that direction, and that in any case, the DVR is on the decline.
This edition of Mac Voices is brought to you by Harry's, the shaving gear you will respect, not throw away. We're talking about Harry's, the folks who make some amazing shaving razors, blades, and shaving cream. And that might surprise you as a Mac Voices viewer, since we typically talk just tech. But life goes way beyond tech. If I could get shaving equipment from the Apple Store, I probably would. But since that's not likely, Harry's is the next best thing. Harry's is the Apple Store of shaving gear. I'm always interested in how companies get their start. Harry's started when one of its co-founders, Andy, had a less than stellar experience at a local drugstore when buying razors and blades. Inconvenient and expensive topped his list of negatives. I've had the same experience, and so have you. But it's one of those things that you take for granted because that's the way it's always been. Andy and Jeff, the other co-founder, didn't see it that way. They saw an opportunity to improve the experience and deliver a superior product at a price that is often half of what you find in the drugstore, and they went for it. That's why, when you go to harrys.com, you will have a quality experience. Choose your handle, get some extra blades, pick up some of Harry's specially formulated shaving cream, click, 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 and you're done. And once you're part of the Harry's family, you'll want to sign up for one of Harry's shave plans. 3 plans to choose from, or create one of your own. And then don't worry about running out of blades or cream, so you can concentrate on more important things. I know you're going to love Harry's products and service, and that's why I want you to go to harrys.com right now, pick your gear, and start enjoying Harry's clean, simple handle design, sharp, durable blades, and great shaving cream. And to get you started, use the promo code MacVoices to save $5 on your first order. That's $5 off your first order with the promo code MacVoices. Harry's, the shaving gear you will respect, not throw away. Thanks to Harry's for their support of Mac Voices.
From a practical standpoint, I still don't quite get. I get certain aspects of the present licensing model, but there are bands out there, there are filmmakers that would kill to get you to sit down and watch their content. Mm-hmm. And then you have this other faction that I will overgeneralize and call Hollywood that seems to say, oh no, you can't see our content unless you jump through this hoop and stand on your hands and it's the right phase of the moon. And it's so different, and I keep wondering when people are just going to say, you know what, enough. Yes, I want to see the new Spider-Man. I want to see the new Captain America. But my casual consumption of video content, I can casually consume other things. You know, I'm maybe I'm only going to be willing to pay top dollar, whatever that is, for a blockbuster. But the rest of the time, I really don't need to see. I don't know, because I'm not a big TV watcher, so I don't know what some of the popular shows are. But there are other things I can enjoy just as much to kill time, fill time, whatever. And I guess I go back to Steve Jobs and the iTunes thing. You know, make it affordable, make it easily accessible. You cut way back on piracy, and people will consume it happily, and everybody makes money.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's two things that go on from the other perspective, from the company's perspective. And one is just a resistance to change, when change means changing your financial model. I mean, like the music industry. You come to the music industry and say, how about you give up on all of the money you make from CDs and make it from a different way instead? I mean, what are the odds that they're going to say, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Sure, we'll just abandon every penny we're making right now and try a different way. No, it's not going to happen. And so, of course, they didn't like the idea that file sharing came along and internet downloading came along and threatened their whole CD model. And so I think we continue to see that sort of resistance. This is the way things are. And we want it to just stay that way, even when it's no longer possible for it to stay that way. And the other part is that even if they did go along with it, it wouldn't necessarily work out better than things were in the heyday of whatever it is they're trying to hang on to. In other words, will they make as much money from internet downloading as they made in the heyday of CDs when that was the only way you could get your music? Maybe not. And so maybe they have some right to be fearful as well, not just being Luddites about progress. But that's too bad. I mean, that's the way internet has disrupted things all along. It's true for newspapers. It's true for magazines. It's true for anything that you can't cling to the past simply because you may make less money doing something else in the future if that future thing is just where things are going.
I think we just went back and had the whole Macworld discussion again on a different topic. Things aren't the way they were. They're not going to stay the way they were. You have to adapt, or you're going to be left by the side of the road.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a little different, but yes. Here's a case where the new thing is actually undeniably better than the way things were for everybody, except the people who might be losing money by it. So. I will say a slightly different subject. I just had a great experience last night related to television. I had a great experience. I'm getting more sidetracked. I just saw a tweet this morning that said, if you ever read something that says this is better than sex, the person isn't doing sex right. That may be, but this was a great experience that had nothing to do with sex. It had to do with watching television. And I got interested in watching Orphan Black. It's this BBC series that was written up on Entertainment Weekly. It was on the cover of Entertainment Weekly a few weeks ago and got me interested in watching it. And I ideally wanted to watch it without commercials. And it turned out I have Amazon Prime. It wasn't available on Netflix, but I checked on Amazon Prime, and it was available for free without commercials on Amazon Prime. So I said, great. The previous season, not the current season, but I haven't seen the previous season, so that was just fine. So but the problem was I have a 60-inch TV, and I wanted to watch it on my 60-inch TV. So I said, what the hell, let's try AirPlay. So I took my iPad downstairs, launched the Amazon Prime app, got Orphan Black to come up, start to play it. When I start to play it, the option to switch to AirPlay was there, and within I had my Apple TV connected to my large screen television, and using the AirPlay and the Apple TV and the iPad, I switched to the television, and it was in beautiful high definition, no stuttering, no buffering, nothing. It looked as good as if I had played it off of NBC, and I watched the whole show that way, and it's just unbelievable. The technology continues to astound me, the way the rapid pace in which just this level of convenience keeps accelerating.
And I'm going to piggyback that with a story of my own, and I usually tell some variation of the story about this time of year, but the Masters tournament was a couple weekends ago. And if you use the Masters app, and again, you can mirror off your iPhone to your big screen TV. You don't even have to have the iPad. You have so much broader coverage, and CBS does a great job with that tournament on broadcast. But there are also these multiple other streams where if you're a golfer, you'll know Amen Corner, and you want to follow maybe the lead group or the second group, or see the 18th hole, and so you tune into that stream. I almost called it a channel, but you tune into that stream. That's all you see. You see all the golfers go through at Amen Corner. And it just, it's like, okay, this is how live sports could be if you had people that were not so greedy about just they have to present it the way they want. Present it the way the audience wants. I'm not a huge football fan, but I enjoy football. But I can think of, there are probably a bunch of different camera angles, a lot of different things about a football game or a basketball game or a hockey game that heaven knows the baseball people. I mean, they seem to be crazier than anybody, and maybe they would enjoy multiple streams from different angles.
Hopefully it's all coming. It'll be slowed because of what we're talking about. It's fun to sort of imagine. We're seeing evolution as opposed to revolution, and that's what we have to live with. I was going to say it could be fun to imagine that there were no television networks, no Hollywood studios, no Comcast and Dish satellite networks and so on, but somehow there was all this content out there anyway. And someone said, well, now we have to invent an infrastructure to get all those movies and television shows to the consumer with absolutely nothing in place. And now try to imagine what we would build at that point with nothing to have to overcome or change or modify because nothing existed before. We're just going to build it from the ground up the best way we can imagine it working. I imagine it'll be very different than what we have now, and a lot better. And that's ultimately what I think we're pushing for.
The other thing, to go back to your example, because I just recently heard about Orphan Black from a completely different source, and I thought, okay, that's something that, if and when I ever get a chance, I sort of want to put that on my list of things to look at, because it got great reviews, and it seemed to have a little bit of an edge to it that I would find interesting. But it's BBC. So can you even get it in the U.S.?
Yes, there's if you have cable, there's a station called BBC America.
Okay.
And it broadcasts it. That's how you get it. And that's where you can see the new season that just started a week or two ago. You can see it on BBC America.
Okay. Then, but I guess my point was, though, that there are a lot of shows being produced in other countries that never make it here on even some of our cable channels. And that's a real shame, because there's some great stuff.
Well, and here's another example. While we're swapping examples, I go to the Santa Barbara Film Festival every year because my sister-in-law lives down there. It's a fun way to combine a visit with her and see a bunch of movies, which I love doing. And as is true for any film festival, there are a lot of movies that are shown there that haven't gotten distribution rights yet. That no studio has picked it up to distribute it. And some of them eventually get distribution, and I see them a few months later showing up at our local theaters, and some of them never get distribution. And a couple of them, either because I missed it and everybody said it was good, but I wouldn't even get around to seeing it, or because I saw it and really liked it, maybe I want to get it to see again, to show to my friends who didn't go to the festival and say, this was this really great movie I saw at the festival. So what do? I go online, I go on Amazon. Can I get it on a DVD? And half the time, they're not even available on DVD, or if they are, they're just available, especially if they're foreign films, they're just available on some foreign DVD that's like $50 to get the DVD, and it isn't even clear it'll play on my player at home. And I think, oh my God, what is the big difficulty in making all these film festival films available so that if they're not going to wind up in theaters, people like me can still see them? Why should that be such a big obstacle to overcome? I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, it goes right back to the thing that I started with, the idea that there are people that they want you to see their films. They will come out and buy your popcorn if you'll come in and sit down and watch their film. And so why not make it easy for people to consume some of these things at a reasonable price? Something, because you still got to pay for it. I don't want everything to be free. Right. I would just like it to be affordable so that we can all enjoy it.
No, I would be happy to rent it from iTunes or buy the DVD, like I said, or even get it on my Netflix streaming if that's the way it wound up going. But too often, none of those choices are available.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think they should turn the world over to us. Everybody'd be a lot happier.
Yeah, there you go. Making a note of that. Okay. Note. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I don't know if we want to get into it, but if you feel like it, I also know that you picked up some gear from Macworld and you're in the process of reviewing them, or reviewing it, excuse me. And I don't know if we want to tap that or save that for next time.
Well, I guess we'll save it for next time. We've been at this for a while.
Yeah. Well, we definitely solved the world's TV issues, so
Yeah, it's a totally different subject. So maybe we should just save it for next time.
that's good.
That's just my thought. If you want to pursue it, I'm still here. So
No, I think that is good because that way we can dig into it a little more. And frankly, I know what we're going to talk about, and I have some sitting in my speaker bag that I want to get to, and so I can compare results before we kick it around. So,
all right, so we'll have a showdown next time.
Yeah, selfishly speaking. But I did want to just touch real quickly on a bugs and fixes column you published. This is also a bit of a different subject, but it may be something that people are seeing, and maybe you can help us solve that problem with our MacBook Pros.
Well, I'm not sure how much I can help, but here goes. I went to visit my son in Boulder, suburbs of Boulder, Colorado, and when I brought my MacBook Pro with me and got onto his local network, and then I would find that when I close the lid, put the MacBook to sleep, an hour later I come back, lift up the lid, want to check my email, whatever, it would say I'm not connected to the internet, and then I would look. And that little, whatever it's called, that radar symbol that's in the menu bar that represents the Wi-Fi menu, I'd see that the gray and the black would be rotating in the barber pole sort of way, indicating that's searching for a network. And so I'd click on the menu to see what was happening, and they'd say there were no networks around. That's not true. I mean, not only is his network around, but like a half a dozen of his neighbors' networks I pick up when I normally. And so I said, what the heck is this going on? And then I'd wait about another 30 seconds, and eventually, all 8 or 9 whatever networks would appear, and then sometime after that, it would reconnect to my son's network that I'd been previously connected to. So the next time I said, okay, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. I'm not going to start fiddling with the menus. And so I waited, and like after about 3 minutes or something like that, maybe a little bit less, but after about 3 minutes, it did connect. And this typically did not happen to me at home. At home, I would typically lift up the lid, and either it would be already connected by the time I looked at the screen, or within a very short time afterwards, it would reconnect. And so I said, Brian, is there any reason that I should be having this? Does he have it? And he said, well, yeah, he had it to some extent too, and he had some really old airport hardware. We thought maybe that would be the cause, but I wasn't sure. So I went online, started looking to see what I could learn about it. And there were several Apple community support threads that said this was exactly what they were seeing, and they claimed, which I guess was true for me, that it suddenly got a lot worse after updating to Mavericks. That while this symptom, I could find reports of this sort of symptom dating back several versions of the operating system, all the recent threads were saying, this, I never had this until I updated to Mavericks. And there are a couple of workarounds, one of which I found. The one workaround is to simply turn off your Wi-Fi network and instantly turn it back on. And if I do that, then I reconnect to the network almost all the time, very fast. Another one, which I never would have guessed, but came up in the threads, people said if you just turn off Bluetooth altogether, the problem goes away. I'm not sure why, but that's what people said. And I would say in one thread I was looking at, maybe 75% of the people who complained about the problem said, yes, that made it go away. Problem, of course, is that that's not a great solution if you need Bluetooth for some reason. So I don't consider that to be a permanent fix by any means. And then they went into, the thread goes into all sorts of theories as to what's going on. Is it related, to the type of sleep that you're in, depending upon how long you've kept the Mac asleep, and what else? And there were other suggestions of modifying system files and preferences files, the usual hodgepodge of things that comes up when something's hard to fix. Including people reported that they called Apple tech support to get help, and what Apple told them to do, which typically did not really solve the problem. And so in the end, as far as I can tell from my experience and from these threads that I've read, there is no guaranteed cure, at least not one that doesn't have some undesirable side effect. And so my guess is, especially if we accept the premise that this is something that got worse with Mavericks, that it's going to take an update to OS X to fix it, make it go away again. So if that's something that is bothering you, and apparently doesn't affect everybody, but if that's the symptom that you're having, that's what I can tell you about it.
Interesting. I haven't seen that before. I know I've seen stalled airport networks. Stalled Wi-Fi networks when I've been in airports and all, where it's almost like all the slots are full and you have to wait for somebody to log off. But I haven't seen anything when my MacBooks have gone to sleep or then wake them up and they're fine. So I don't know.
Well, again, this is not a question of logging into a Wi-Fi network. It's a question of actually getting connected to the Wi-Fi.
Getting connected to it. Interesting. Well, turn off the Bluetooth, or when I did want to ask you to clarify when you said turn off your Wi-Fi network and turn it back on. Did you mean in the menu bar?
Yes, that's exactly. Yeah, you go to the menu bar and it says, I can tell you exactly what it says here. It probably just says turn off Wi-Fi, as I recall. Turn Wi-Fi off. And you just select that from the menu bar, and then like a second later, say turn Wi-Fi on, and within a second or two after that, you'll be connected.
Okay, good to know. Good to know, because that could be very frustrating. It would seem like an obvious thing to do, but it may take you a little while to figure it out. So if you're affected by that, folks, there's Ted's solution until we get a fix from Apple.
There you have it.
Ted, it's always fun. It was great to see you in San Francisco. I can't wait to do it again next year, or maybe we can get together over WWDC.
Yes, I am not going to be at WWDC. I didn't even enter the lottery this year. I think, well, you're going to get me talking again here. Last year, I decided, not part of my retirement, but I decided that last year was to be my last year at WWDC. What happened was, I thought it's like $1,500, and I'm not really a developer, so I had double feeling. I said, first, it's not worth $1,500 for me to go, and second, I don't want to take the slot away from a real developer who might make more use of it than I would. As much as I really enjoy going, I actually sit into a lot of the developer sessions when I go and enjoy it a lot and learn a lot, and it is useful. And of course, getting to see the keynote and going to stump the experts and the bash and everything, so it's all fun. So I have a great time. But I decided to pass, and then at the last second, I actually got, I knew when tickets were going to go on sale. I got up, I forget what I had to do. I forget how early in the morning was that particular year, but whatever it was, I got in front of my desk at the right time and just said to myself, am I going to go? Am I not going to go? Should I stick to my resolve not to go? At the last second, I said, no, I'm going to try and go. And so I quickly entered it to go, and it said too late. It was sold out by the time I tried. Though it was very frustrating because I had gotten to a point where it said I had a ticket, and then the system crashed apparently. And then when I tried to get the ticket the second time, it said it was sold out. But then it turned out so I said, okay, what the heck? I'm not going to go. Until the last second impulse, I wasn't going to go anyway, so it all worked out for the best. And then I got a call later that day from Apple saying, probably due to the glitch that led to the crash, is my supposition, but in any case, I got a call that said, I'm in if I want to. And I can still go. And so I said, okay, that was, the gods, whatever. The Apple gods were telling me I was supposed to go. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go, and this will be my last time going. Next year, I'm sure it'll be even crazier than this year. I'm not even going to bother trying. And so I went last year and had a great time and said that was it. So when it came around this year, I said, I'm not going to enter the lottery, and I stuck to it. No last-minute impulse to change my mind. So I obviously didn't get a ticket, and I'm not going, but given that I live in the Bay Area here, so it's only a short train ride for me to go in from my house to the WWDC. I'll probably come in, go to some parties, and see you if you're going to be there, and it'll still be fun.
Yeah, that's it. Sometimes you get as much, well, maybe not. As a non-developer, you get as much out of the parties and the chances to connect with people as you do if you went. For the developers, obviously, they want to get in front of Apple. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm. All right, well then it's a date. Assuming that I make it out, we'll get together and have dinner.
Sounds good.
And folks, we'll be doing it at an undisclosed location, so sorry. Ted, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for the time.
Back in 2012.
It's back in 2012. Thanks.
Yeah, it's always fun, Chuck, and I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're back in the present.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do it again.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, take care. Mm. Folks, this is Mac Notables on Mac Voices. I'm Chuck Joyner. It's great to be back in the present, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the Mac Voices Dispatch, to stay up to date with all the latest Mac Voices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com.